9 o'clock. We'll call the July 31st meeting of the Stearns County Board of Commissioners to order. Roll call will show that all the commissioners are present. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item, as always, is a public access forum. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak at the public access forum? Anyone for the public access forum? Anyone that has to speak on issues that are not found on today's agenda? Speakers are asked to approach a microphone, give your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 to 4 minutes. Total allotted time for this forum is 10 minutes. A citizen may speak at the public access forum once per month. County board members will not engage in dialogue with speakers, but rather refer the matter to the appropriate county department. Okay. You may begin.
Thank you, Chair Megan. My name is Bashir. I am a resident of Stearns County for the last 12 months. I've come here to just get to know you and everybody else here in the boardroom, but also to introduce my work. I work with an agency that is called Cairo, the Center for African Immigrants and Refugees Organization, Cairo as in Cairo, Egypt. We mainly work with kids and parents in schools from preschool all the way to 12th grades. We do community organizing. Our office or our corporate is in Oregon. That's where I moved from 12 months ago. And we have a couple of things lined up that we're doing here in partnership with many stakeholders. One of those is we are doing a research in collaboration with Centra Care in the next few months. We are also in the plans to build a multicultural center here in Stearns County. We've met with our state elected officials yesterday, and my plan is to reach out to each one of you and talk to you about these plans and hopefully have you as a partner as well. We recognize and value the leadership that you do for the county, the service that you do for us, and I'm in appreciation of that. Thank you so much for the time, and I'll see each one of you separately. Thank you much.
Could you give your address, please?
My address is 2510 41st Avenue South, St. Cloud, and zip code is 56301.
Okay, where should we refer him to? The Human Services?
I would think so.
Yeah. Melissa Huberty is here. I think I saw her.
Yes,
Human Services.
She's yeah.
Okay. Melissa, would you make sure you connect with him? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else here for public access forum? Anyone else?
Hello. My name is Marcia Hollerman, and I would just like to have a word with the commissioners.
Could you give your address, please? Yeah.
My address?
Mouth closer to the mic.
Yeah, we can't hear
okay.
you. Yeah.
There you go.
Hello, my name is Marcia Hollerman. I would just like to have a word with the commissioners, either now or after the meeting shortly, in regards to the Environmental Service Department of Stearns County. I have been in business over 30 years, and I would just like to have a complaint issue. The 30 years I was in business, I've been in business, Stearns County. I've talked to my commissioner, Steve Notch, and I would just like to bring this forth to the committee. So I can do it afterwards and approach Steve Notch. Thank you.
Okay. Could you give your address, please?
25711, County Road 18, Bruton, Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here for the public access forum?
I didn't understand it, Mr. Chair. What is this? I didn't understand the comment.
She wants to speak with us about environmental services. Is she going to speak to you, Commissioner Notch?
Speak to us.
I spoke with Marcia last night, so I don't know if you want to just kind of address some of the concerns here,
Well, no, then she should be going to Environmental Services. Either she should address the board here or talk to Environmental Services. So I don't know. Do you have information?
Well, I think, Marcia, you have a issue with some environmental services, how they took care of you on your business. And I don't know if you want to just take a couple minutes here and just state it.
Okay,
Well, yeah,
yes, could you
Why
do that
don't you
right
come
now?
up here, Marcia?
As again, I'd like to say I've been in business over 30 years in Stearns County. About 2014, we had a new inspector come into Bruton, Minnesota. The first words that were indicated is things no longer will go as they used to go here. As the time proceeds, my first indication of that was when my business was closed down by Stearns County Sheriff Department on Wednesday evening at 9 o'clock, which I had of no knowledge. 2015, one of the other restaurants was, the coffee had been closed down. 2016, the Caddy Shack was listed as one of the dirtiest places to eat in Stearns County. 2017, the Classic was closed down. 2017, my food license was suspended. Well aware I need to do some things. 2018, one of my houses were inspected. I was given 1 day to comply with what needs to be done. That's all I'm asking, is that there's needs to be better communication and some time allotment and working. I have never worked with any type of supervisor that uses such gross use of power. And that's all I'm asking, if that Shelley, who's the director, I was not aware of till this last year. I thought Mr. Schweifels was. I just asked that the department work with me, and I think that in this time is being done, but I just didn't feel that we need someone with that kind of power in the area that we're trying to keep afloat.
Commissioner Merrick.
What, you know, as the chair indicated, when it's the public access forum, we take information, but we don't have discussion, but we refer it to whatever department head. And I'm going to ask that our county administrator work with Environmental Services and any other department, and then report back to the board at another meeting.
Thank you.
Mr. Notch?
And then if I could just ask one question. Marcia, have you spoken at all with Shelley? Okay.
I have worked some with Shelley, yes.
Okay.
As I said, I was not really aware that Shelley was the director till this year. I thought Hank Schweifels was.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Shelley, you'll get back to us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here for public access forum? Anyone else? Anyone else? Seeing no one, we'll go to item B, which is the consent agenda, and we did have one addition to the consent agenda. What are your wishes with that?
I'll move the consent agenda
Okay. With the
with
addition.
the item in our blue packet.
I'll second that with a
Been
brief comment after.
moved and
vote.
moved and seconded. Commissioner Lensmeyer.
Go ahead and vote, and then I'll make a comment.
Oh,
It doesn't
okay.
impact any decision-making.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments? If not, all in favor signify with aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Commissioner
And then
Lensmeyer.
one item, number 7, the acceptance of a donation of Quarry Park and Nature Preserve. At some point, I hope we acknowledge this to a little greater degree. Probably Dwayne and I are the only two on the board that remember Ken Hopke when he worked here. Ken, way back in the day when Environmental Services was called Planning, Ken was the director of that department. So at some juncture, I'd like to see the donation more broadly recognized. But this is good enough for now.
Thank you. Anyone else? Otherwise, let's move then to.
Lee, I'll follow up with that with Parks, at Park Commission.
Great, thank you.
At this point, we'll recess the regular county board meeting, conduct the Human Services Board meeting. In Human Services, we have Melissa Huberty here. We have only one item on the agenda, I believe it, right? Is that consent item?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'm Melissa Huberty, the Human Services Administrator, and I have only one item on the consent agenda today, and it's C1 on page 200. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Anyone?
I'll move the consent item.
Been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify with aye.
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 Opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. And we'll close the Human Services Board meeting and reconvene the regular county board meeting. And we have a public hearing. Item D, presenters Randy.
Yeah, I could have Sarah and Jeff come up from the auditor's office, and with them also today will be Chad Martini and Shelley Benson, and they'll do a short PowerPoint on the fee study that was done this year.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Sarah Utsch, and I am one of the new finance director here at Stearns County. And we are here today to talk about the fee study. Stearns County does this every year. They do 25% of, or 1/4 of the departments are analyzed each year. And the process we do to go about that is the Auditor Treasurer's Office works with whichever department to help determine an average or an estimated cost to provide the service. We then provide that information back to the department, and they use that to determine which fee they would like to charge for that service. This year we did review environmental services, and at that time we opened it up to all departments to ask if any departments have any other fees that they would like to change or be analyzed. And in that process we had the Land Management Division make a couple changes, and also Human Services makes a couple changes. So if you would like, I was going to invite Shelley Benson to come up and go through a broad overview of her suggested changes.
Good morning, board members. Shelley Benson, Environmental Services Director. What we did last year was made some changes to the food and beverage fees only. We also knew that we would be doing a full review this year, so what we did last year was make a 46% increase in food and beverage fees to accommodate for the new position that we requested, knowing that this year we would take a look at those fees. We also recognize that we don't have a direct comparison to anyone since our fee schedule looks a little bit different. So we did a little more work looking at the city of St. Cloud and the state of Minnesota fees. So we did go back and do some adjustments to those fees. So you will see, again, some shifts in the food and beverage fees that are more reflective of what we think is an appropriate fee level for us. We did not do any fee schedule changes to feedlots. We think that's an appropriate level at this time. We did do some minor changes to sewage treatment and land use. So we do have a few areas that we made some changes to in that area to be a little more reflective of area fees. So if you look at our comparison counties, you'll recognize those are in the same ballpark as those other counties. So if you have any specific questions for me, I do have the two supervisors here if there are specific questions related to those fees.
Commissioner Notch.
I just have one general question, Shelley. Could you just, let's just say the large gathering permit renewal, you got a current rate of 400, proposed rate of 400. Can you kind of maybe for the people listening and the ones in the audience, just kind of explain what all takes place where you come up with the $400 fee?
Okay, so from our standpoint, what we do is we take a look at that location, and we look at who, as a part of the ordinance, who reviews it. So we have other staff members that review that large gathering, but typically on a renewal, they're not changing locations, so we send it to emergency services. We check to make sure that those people are meeting those standards. It goes to the auditor's office. They check to see that it's meeting its standards. We go through an internal review on that application, and then we look at putting all those pieces together, and then we can issue the renewal license. So it's a matter of having our staff review information that goes out to other staff members in the county, so it's not just our department that's reviewing them. And so the costs are associated with each of those parties that would be affiliated with doing the review.
Thanks.
Commissioner Eric?
I have that same kind of follow-up, and I talked to Sarah yesterday, and thank you for responding so quickly to that. And I'm not proposing any changes, but I wanted to highlight the service that's provided, the cost of the service, the fee, and then what the tax subsidy is. And what Sarah provided, and is it in everybody's blue packet? Did everybody get that? And I just want to go through this because this is important business. The top of the sheet that was in your packet has, well, the food and beverage, and then five other permits or licenses that are attributed to land use. And you can see that, and these are averages, they're not down to the last dollar and cent, but the average cost is $1,749,000. The projected fee is $790,560,000, and so the total estimated county subsidy tax levy is $958,000 plus. But there is a public benefit to some of this as well. Can you just overview generally without getting into specifics, or is that not possible?
Well, there's a lot of things that we do that we don't charge fees for. And I think part of that is reflected here. And so some of the fees that you see show, you know, it's easy to show the direct relationship. But a lot of those things, I'll use the septic program for an example. Septic certification, there are certain things we're required to do. We process over 600 of those a year. We don't charge a fee for it because we're just processing the paper, but we still have to check and we have to do enforcement and follow-up. So there's a lot of work that goes with it that you're not seeing. So those are the kinds of things that we do that we don't charge that fee for, and we don't do the certifications in our office. Those are done by private parties.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what we do is meet with customers, phone calls, walk-in service, on-site review, applications, review. A lot of that work is done without charging a fee, because that's the service that we provide. So explaining the zoning ordinance and anything related to it and how those various rules and regulations work is pretty common business for us that we don't charge fees for.
Yeah, okay. The one that jumps out at me is the zoning, where the average cost is $717,000 plus. The fee is $226,000, so it's almost $500,000 of tax subsidy. That's a big one.
Yes. So from a zoning perspective, when someone comes in and makes a request of us, we take a look at that request, we review it, we see what options they have. They often come back in again. Sometimes we go out to a site and do the site visit, and we're doing those kinds of things. So we're doing our time, and then we're out in the field, so there's mileage associated with it. There's all of those kinds of things that go into it, and yet we haven't charged a fee for any of it, because they're asking the questions, and I think that's a part of our public responsibility.
Sure.
Is to answer those questions.
Okay, thank you. And Sarah, I'm wondering, can you take just a minute to kind of go over the numbers that you have on here, just for, you know, for my benefit and for the board's benefit?
Yeah.
I kind of understand the top and the bottom is a little confusing, so can you just go over that for all of us,
Yeah.
please?
So as you mentioned, Commissioner, the top portion is really just kind of a summary of all the individual pages that you received prior to this, kind of gathering the average cost for each item, multiplying that times a volume, which obviously is a estimate based on
Right.
what we've seen historically on the volume, to get to an estimated subsidy, if you will, or amount of levy dollars that is supplementing the services they provide. Down below, I did a department-wide analysis of environmental services because in order to actually capture the levy impact, you have to look at their whole department, not just the time we're estimating goes into their fees. And so off to the left, I looked at 2017, and it's the last full year of activity that we have at the county to look at. So I went through with actual numbers, what they brought in fee revenue versus grant revenue, compared that to the costs of the department. And then I did what's in our working budget for 2019. That obviously is not adopted yet by the commissioners, but that is just where we're at in our working budget through the fee study. So I highlighted at the bottom that with the 2019 fee rates as proposed, we are estimating the levy impact of the department as a whole to decrease by about $3,700 or remain fairly flat. Which is positive considering that we're expecting grant revenues to decrease and costs of the department are always going up.
Okay. Well, thank you for that information, and I appreciate staff's, we put a process in place a couple of years ago where, like you said, 25% of the fees are looked at each year, and I think that's a good process. So thank you for what you do.
Anyone else? Otherwise, I would like, on page 203 of ours, it's page 3, I think, of your
What
item.
page? What page?
203 in our packet,
203.
bottom part, sewage. It's got residential construction permit going from $350 to $600. Could you, and then what's plus the operating permit? How much is the operating permit?
Okay, Mr. Chair, I think thank you for bringing that up. That's perfect. That's for a type 4 system. So our standard systems that we have in the county are types 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
Type 4 is a different type of permit where there's other things happening. They need pre-treatment. And with that, then they need to have an operating permit to make sure they're meeting the standards. So that's something that we monitor. If we just put in a type 4 and there's typically for businesses and things that have larger commercial waste, a lot of grease, those kinds of things, we have a higher number. It was suggested at the budget committee that we look at a residential fee if in fact someone has to go to a type 4 for residential. So that's why we lowered that fee to a $600 fee, and it's not capturing the same amount that a commercial establishment would. So that's why we created that residential type 4.
Okay, so that's new.
Yes, that would be new to accommodate a residential type 4 system, not at the same rate as the other systems.
So typical, that one does not refer then to a typical house.
It's not very common that we get one, correct?
Okay. And then the one right below it from $350 to $1,200. That one jumped out at me also.
Which one was that? I'm sorry.
Right below that same page.
The operating?
Yeah. Almost 4 times.
So we have a commercial establishment operating permit. Those would be for the purpose of making sure we do the monitoring out at the site and get that information in, and sometimes it's a tracking process. So that's why we have those fees.
To me, it was quite a big jump for a 1 year.
Yeah, we took a look at the capture rate, and we tried to look at, are we in the 50 to 55% range? So some of these are big changes because we were trying to hit that capture rate in that program area. So that's why those fees, if I would go back and look at my notes, I'm thinking that's what it was. I can look at Mark quick and say, is that what it was? Capture rate? Yeah. So that was just to try to capture more of that rate rather than being subsidized.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions?
So
Commissioner Notch.
Shelley, a 4 and a 5 type, those are more of a rare, not often used type
Yes,
permit?
not
Very
common. If you want numbers, I can look at Mark and he can tell you, because I can't.
Well, I was kind of maybe looking for a little more explanation of like type 4 or 5, because it is a large amount, maybe for those listening.
Correct.
to
I'm going to
understand.
have Mark come up and he's going to go right to the podium. That'll work. He'll explain a type 4 and a type 5 system.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Mark Lateral, Environmental Services. To answer your question regarding the type 4, type 5 differences, a type 4 system is a system that uses a pretreatment technology to clean up the effluent waste strength before it disperses into the ground. So it has some sort of mechanical operation to it that a typical system won't, an aerator, a blower, a fixed film, using bacteria to clean up the waste strength. That's what a type 4 system is classified as, or classifies a type 4 system. A type 5 system is a classification of a system that doesn't meet any of the other categories, so 1 through 4. It can be an engineered type system. It can be a system that uses a technology that hasn't been registered with the state of Minnesota for use. It's kind of, I don't want to mislabel it, but it's kind of that category of let's try it and see if it works type of thing. County ordinance actually does not allow type 5s, only in situations where 1 through 4 cannot be installed. So in the last 10 years, we haven't even installed a type 5 system. Type 4 systems are, as you indicated, fairly rare as well. I think maybe we've permitted 4 or 5 over the last 5 years. So,
Yeah,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, and those two, we do have, we estimate what the volume of those are, and the type 4 residential, we estimated 1
Yeah.
a year, and the type 4 other establishments, we estimate 3 a year. So they're very rare, as opposed to the residential ones, where it's like 350, I think, is the estimate on
Right.
those.
right.
Correct.
These are, type 4s and 5s are definitely not your mainstream systems that residences are installing, so.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Commissioner Morgan,
Yeah.
these are proposed fees. With Mike's point, if you think that increase is too much, I don't think we're talking a large revenue or levy hit here. If you'd like to phase that in more, we certainly could do that.
Well, when I read this, I thought this was your typical residence that was going in. That's
No.
where I was stuck
No.
on this, so. I did have one other area where I'd like you to just review for us, and that's on page 209. I'm not sure what it is in your packet, but numbers 34, 36, and 37 there, again, have major percentage increases. I'd like you to address those. This 34 is a plan review fee for a campground.
Correct. Mr. Chair, so what we did is we took a look at kind of the cost that it takes, that overall, what it takes us to do the job and what we're looking at. So what we're finding is campgrounds, as you can see, we're not getting a lot of volume, but they take a lot of time to do. So that's why we're just trying to capture at a higher rate when we do a plan review. And plan review is when someone's doing something new. So they're coming in with an addition to a campground or manufactured home park or those kinds of things. So when someone's adding new stuff, we have to look at all of the features of the ordinance. So that's why it's a higher level of review. And so we put in a higher capture rate. So that's why the big fee changed, because before we really didn't look at that, collecting and capturing more of that actual cost.
Is there a lot of time put in for reviews of temporary food stands?
Do you have that number that we gave for temporary food stand? What we do is we turned in an average number of those, and so then we gave that to Jeff, and I don't have that number, so I'm hoping he does. The worksheets that we turned in?
You're talking 8 hours.
About 8 hours of time for temporary food stand.
Does that warrant that type of an increase all at once? I don't know, how many of those are there now?
How many, what's our number? What was that?
Four.
Four. So if you want to, you can certainly, like Randy had mentioned, it's not a great revenue capture. If you want to do a lesser number to phase in over time, we certainly can do that as well.
What does everyone else think on that? It just kind of jumped out at me as I went through these.
Well, the point that I try to raise is it going to be charged to whoever the individual is or whoever the business is, or is it going to be charged to the general public on the tax levy? And I don't know what these numbers should be. Sometimes there's a public purpose and that plays into it, but somebody's going to pay the amount. So it's either the individual or the business or the general taxpayer. So we have to decide as a board which is what it should be. And that's why the original sheet or where we show the tax subsidy, that kind of gives the larger picture. These are individual ones, and whether they're right or wrong, I don't know. I don't have the answer. So what process do you go through? You actually look at the number of hours, and then you take a person's salary and multiply that, or how do you go about that?
That's the same way we look at, so Shelley provides the number of hours taken, and then we look at the person's salary, we take all the benefits, FICA, Medicare, and come up to department costs. And we also look at all the other department costs, like the cost for the computer, the printing, publishing, any union dues, mileage. It all gets calculated. And we also bring in a portion of the human resources, the building costs, heat and energy. We bring it all in to create an hourly wage or an hourly billable rate per hour. Then we take that billable rate per hour times the number of hours Shelley says it takes to complete that service.
Okay.
That's how we get the cost.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Lenzmeyer.
Fees are always a discussion between the public benefit versus the personal benefit, and that varies with each individual that looks at it. Like justice and beauty, that allocation is in the eye of the beholder. But at some point, we can do the best we can to do this cost allocation, but at some point it gets to be paralysis by analysis. It's great that we know this stuff when we go through this one time, but still the allocation of personal versus public benefit is always going to be a discussion item somewhere along the line.
Those are ones that just jumped out at me as I went through this. And I
need
really have no strong feelings one way or the other. I just wanted.
And so we have a public hearing, don't we?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. We ready for the public hearing?
Commissioner Morgan, a little while back, Dwayne asked a question on the various mapping fees, and if we could have Chad touch base on that for a little bit to help answer Dwayne's question.
Morning, Chad.
Morning, Commissioners. Chad Martini, Division of Land Management. Way back in March, there was a question about some of the consistency among land-related departments with regards to fees. And working with Shelley, working with Jeff Johnson in the assessor's office, we went through the fee schedule. We talked about it as a group. And really the results are, if you're a customer coming into the county, regardless of what land department you might go into, whether it's environmental services, land records, survey, the customer is not facing a different fee structure depending on what department they go through. There's no overlaps, there's no gaps. And so from that standpoint, I think we're doing very well in consistency from a customer standpoint related to fees. Certainly more detail I could go into, but for the sake of time, I think I'll just throw it back to you as a group to see if you have any follow-up questions or more information you'd like for me related to that topic.
Anyone? Any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are we ready to go to the public hearing? Okay. We'll have public hearing on the fee schedule. Is there anyone wishing to address the board? The public hearing on the fee schedule. Anyone on the fee schedule? Third call. Anyone wishing to address the board on the fee schedule?
And we did not have any written comments either from the
Okay.
auditor's office.
All right, thank you. Seeing no one, the public hearing is now closed. And board members, what do you?
Mr. Chair, I'll move the recommendation and thank staff for putting this together for us.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We are now up to item E, which is another public hearing. And this one is consider enacting ordinance number 574 on rezoning submitted by JITA Properties. We have Shelley Benson here to give us an overview on Angie Berg.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Shelley Benson, Environmental Services Director, and this will be our first item today. So we do have a public hearing, and Angie Berg has gone through and reviewed most of this information. So I'm going to have her present it, and we do have some maps available for you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Angie
Morning.
Berg, Environmental Services. In front of you today is a Planning Commission recommendation on a rezoning for JITA Properties of Avon. Planning Commission heard this item on April 14th, 2018. And the request is to rezone approximately 15 acres from A40 to Residential 5. The property is located south and east of Timber Road in Holding Township near Two Rivers Lake. Previous action on June 5th and subsequently June 10th, the board did schedule a public hearing and then accepted the applicant's delay until today in order for them to submit a stormwater plan, which has been submitted. Your recommended action today would be to review the file, conduct the public hearing, and if you choose to concur with the Planning Commission's 3-2 vote of approval, you can adopt their findings of fact and enact ordinance number 574. If you choose not to concur with their recommendation to approve, we would ask you state the reasons for denial, and then we'll bring back findings of fact in the form of a resolution at a future meeting. Packet page 217, I'm just going to hit on the issues the commissioners asked us to highlight for purposes of today. At the public hearing and also at your June 5th meeting, some of the residents of the area expressed concern with drainage related to County Ditch 28, water levels, flooding in that Two Rivers Lake area. As indicated, the floodplain boundary is slightly outside of the National Wetland Inventory boundary, so it's unlikely that there will be any fill in the floodplain. However, the applicant did hire an engineer to submit and submitted a stormwater plan, even though a stormwater plan for this size of development is not required. They did provide that information. We did consult with the DNR, both the area hydrologist and the state floodplain manager, and reviewed the application with them to receive any input. Their information back to us is as long as they would provide and implement a stormwater management plan, their concerns would be addressed in terms of drainage, flooding, etc. Elevation, slope, erosion, that was also a concern. In the packet, we identify what the slopes are. If the property is rezoned, it would go through our platting process. So we would look more specifically at the engineered plan and also an erosion and sediment control plan. We keep a financial guarantee to make sure that the project is implemented as proposed. So those would be worked out during the platting process. I don't have anything else to add, although I would just like to highlight on packet page 240, 241, and 242, we did receive written testimony, and that's all I have received in terms of written testimony since the board packet was submitted. So why don't we go ahead and hear from the public unless you have any questions, and then I'll read these into the record if these people are not here.
Does anyone have any questions of Angie before we open the public hearing?
No.
Okay, seeing none, we will now open the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this issue? Please approach a microphone, give your name and address, please.
Hi, gentlemen. My name is Dan Brady. I live at 19378 Rivers Road, and I'm here representing the Two Rivers Lake Association as their board chair. There's residents here that are representing their own issues. As far as the Lake Association is concerned, we've always had two issues with these types of situations. The primary issue that we have is ponding. The ponding standards for the county and for the townships are totally inadequate and very easy to get around. If you have a small enough subdivision, you don't need ponding. And ponding is really the only way to slow down the water. That's going to run into the lake that comes off of these properties. They become impervious surfaces when you go residential or for tiling. I think the issue for the township was it wasn't a unanimous vote because the issue there is all the tiling that goes in, that creates impervious surfaces. There's no ponding there required there either. And I think that there should be a standard for the county that the county submits to the townships that they need to live up to, something very similar to what the city of Albany does. You know, they have to live up to a standard that they have for impervious surfaces and how much ponding is required depending on how many acres of impervious surface. There's a 10-to-1 or whatever the ratio is. And the same situation is here. And I don't care if it's a half acre or 500 acres, it needs to have a standard. And the county needs to see that the townships live up to it, whether it's tiling or going residential. That's number one. And number two issue that we have is the CD 28. I think that any opportunity that the county has to take a look, everybody Respec Engineering did the watershed analysis for Two Rivers Lake. We all know where the benefited acres are within that. And every opportunity that the county gets for a property that's within that, what we know to be the benefited acres should go on the benefited acres list because it's it's so obvious that it just needs to be done. We all need to start owning the water that runs off our properties and runs through Holding Fort. That's all there is to it. So those are the two issues that we have here that we would like to see, a ponding plan to capture the water that comes off for both sediment and just the rate that the runoff is. We've dodged some bullets this year. We've had some 6s and 8s and 10-inch rainfalls around. We didn't get any of those. We haven't had anything over 2.5. So we've been fine all summer, but that's just rolling the dice. So we would like the county to really consider taking one of these cases and saying, look, the standards have to change. We have to start living up to ponding requirements and CD 28 benefited acre establishment, as just part of the routine. That's really my two comments as regards to the Lake Association. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak on this issue?
Peter Donahue, attorney representing the property owner. This morning, Commissioners, we appreciate the opportunity to being able to address both the concerns that have been raised by the gentleman who preceded me, as well as those raised by the staff. We undertook to do a stormwater study because we recognized from prior appearances that stormwater runoff was an issue. And so even though we didn't have to try and demonstrate to both the board as well as those who are opposed to this, that there is the adequate ability on this property to take care of the stormwater, to take care of the runoff from impervious surface and development of the land so as not to drain it into the lake. I guess we see this in prior action taken by the Planning Commission. They have recommended approval because the proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It straddles the agricultural zone and the developed zone. This is an appropriate use of your zoning powers by reducing the density between the agricultural use and the residential use. It is compatible with the adjacent residential homes. The concerns that are addressed on the environmental issues can be and will be resolved in the plating process. This isn't the point where those issues have to be resolved because we have those extra standards that you impose through your existing law to protect the adjacent property owners. Their concerns are legitimate. We do not mean to disregard nor dismiss them. They have legitimate concerns, but we can address those concerns on the property without adversely impacting their property. The proposal will have a minimal impact on existing public services. It will have a minimal impact on public health, safety, and traffic generation. Those are the prior findings. There is nothing offered that is inconsistent or contrary to those findings. This morning I have brought with me the property owner and the engineer who did the stormwater study, which again I call to your attention is unnecessary at this stage in the proceeding, but we did it so that you have, as a governmental body who we're asking to take action, so you have something documented, professionally prepared, that states that this matter can be approved and that the issues that are being raised by the public can be addressed on the property without adversely impacting those people. The staff did note some deficiencies in the stormwater plan, and we acknowledge those, but we're not going to undertake soil borings at this stage in the proceeding, because if you do not approve, we have then wasted all that money. So we didn't go ahead with the formal stormwater study in a complete form because to incur those additional costs would be unnecessary, imprudent, and premature. We did the study so that you had something in front of you to demonstrate that there will not be an adverse impact from this development on the adjoining neighbors. We don't want to diminish their property value. We want to enhance it. We want our property value to be enhanced, and we want theirs to be maintained. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak on this issue?
Do you have any questions?
Anyone?
Good job.
Good morning. Good morning, board members. My name is Mike Marush, and I live at 38417 Tamarack Lane, which is adjacent to this project and the properties. One of my key interests that I haven't heard much mentioned are the actual wetlands that are part of this property. The previous owner advised me that there was somewheres on this 15-acre property that there are approximately 7 to 8 acres of it are wetlands. Looking at the development of the property, I believe I'm all in favor of it, but I'm also in favor of the wetlands. Is this realistically an R5 property? What I've seen for proposals are three lots and then a cluster of homes on the other lot, making it an R5. That confuses me, and it confuses me to the fact that our diligence and our responsibility to the wetlands. The current wetland that's located closest to Two Rivers Lake and closest to Lot 6, which is part of this property, does have a culvert that goes to the north and does create direct access into Two Rivers Lake. That culvert is quite small. I believe if enhancing the properties and putting up the other structures, and without a water mitigation system in plan right now, the water does come over the road when it rained 2 inches. Currently, Tamarack Lane does go underwater. It does subside as it flows north into Two Rivers Lake and into Ditch 28. This was a previous question that hasn't been addressed. I believe all intentions here are good, but all intentions are not typically looking at the wetlands, nor the limits of the wetlands, nor the preservation of the wetlands. And I believe that that is our responsibility, is to preserve all of that. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else to speak? Second call, anyone else that wishes to speak? Final call, anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. Commissioners? Commissioner Merrick.
Just a question. I need to get in my own mind. Is this a part of the entire drainage system that's going to be under review from St. Martin up to Holdingford, that whole drainage area?
Mr. Chair, I would look to Randy. I know Chad Martini was here earlier. He did provide me with some information related to the fact that there is going to be a review, but I don't know the boundaries of that.
So where is that at?
That'll be starting sometime late summer, early fall. We'll do that review of that. There was a question on the benefited acres here. It's in the benefited acres now, and it will remain in the benefited acres. So it'll just be a little bit of a different reallocation on what property owners pay what, but it stays in the benefited acres.
When do we expect to get a report on that?
I would say mid to late fall.
And then along with that will come recommendations.
Correct.
To correct whatever is out there.
Yeah, there'll be a report. What form and what recommendations, I guess we'll see once the report's done.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioner Notch.
And then Shelley and Angie, in regards to the wetlands, those would be mitigated at some point.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Knotts, the wetlands would need to be delineated as part of the process. If any portion of the wetland would be impacted, they would need to go through that process. And thirdly, we would enact a setback for a newly created lot enacted after a particular date. There's a 25 or 50-foot setback, which is not the case for lots of record. And so those would be my two comments related to the wetland. The stormwater management plan is currently proposing, as Mr. Donahue pointed out, to use wetlands for exfiltration credit, which is not allowed. But without soil borings, it's hard to know that. So again, if the stormwater management plan would not be able to be met, well, then the number of lots would have to be reduced from 3 to 2 or 2 to what's there. That's how it would sort itself out if the rezoning was granted.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Bursky.
Could you put page 238 on the screen? Okay, that doesn't come up as well, but commissioners, on our laptops here, you can see the number of small lots that are in and around that whole area. And it seems that, that the splitting of that property, would be conducive to what's already there. However, we know the challenge is obviously the more impervious you add, the more problematic the water level becomes. But it's a very challenging area, and each and every one of those lots that are there, have residents, they have driveways, and whenever you add impervious, that adds to the problem. So coming to grips with this situation is rather challenging, because I understand the residents that live on the lake would rather not see this development go through, but each and every time we increase the size of a driveway or put a new piece of shed or addition onto a cabin, it all adds up. As far as the development of that property, limiting it to maybe 2 or 3 additional homes, I don't know if that, I believe perhaps it was only 2, would not, be excessive, but of course we have to wait till we see the plat. I wouldn't recommend seeing any more than that. And also I'm encouraged by the preliminary storm drainage study that they've already done. So it's something I think the whole association has to come to grips with and decide what they want to have happen around that lake. But yet within, if we take a look at the individual land rights of the people around there, I see really no reason why we should not be able to move this forward in a reasonable manner.
Anyone else? Any other comments? Commissioner Merrick.
I don't have any problem with the request, but I'm not sure about the timing. I'm a little uncomfortable until this study, this redetermination, or whatever word you want to put with it, is completed. It's just, I'm uncomfortable with that. And so I don't think I can support it at this time. So.
Mr. Notch.
But I think the redetermination of benefits won't have an impact on what they're trying to do. That'll just determine who is going to pay for any improvements, repairs done to that system.
So,
and they're already a benefited acre, so they're going to pay any ditch assessments. Chad's here, I noticed. I would guess he could probably answer that more correctly.
Well, you know, if I can be assured that moving this forward, so when we get the report later this year or whenever that comes, moving this forward will have no bearing on that study, or vice versa.
I don't believe so, but Chad's here. He can probably answer that better than I can.
Morning again, Commissioners. Chad Martini, Division of Land Management. Point of clarification, the work we're doing on CD 28 this fall is a reestablishment of records. It will really reset the ditch right-of-way and reset and give us, as a system, the as-constructed elevation profile of the ditch. It is not a redetermined of ditch benefits. And so the work being done this fall will have really no immediate impact on the project at hand. We'll get no information from what we're doing this fall that will really aid in your decision today. The information we'll get could certainly, with further analysis down the road, provide more answers, but I can't misrepresent what we're doing this fall as something that is really going to give you a real golden ticket piece of information.
So what I'm understanding, you're telling me that moving this forward would not conflict with any report that would come out of this reestablishment, or whatever term that you're using?
Certainly not in the short term. The property is already legally in the benefit of CD 28. So legally they have the right to discharge water into the system. The ins and outs and details of what Angie and Shelley are talking about certainly go beyond ditch law. Bigger questions about wetlands and things like that.
So if this property is rezoned, Shelley or Angie or anybody, what does that allow?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Merrick, in terms of density, it would allow 3 would be standard lots, so 3 approximately 5-acre lots. And if there would be a cluster, it could be up to 5. We've shared with the applicant, however, that based on the floodplain, the wetlands, the topography, 5 is going to be hard to get. And I think he realizes that as well. Again, that's all sorted out if the rezoning is granted, we work with the engineer, the land surveyor, to identify the appropriate place for septic systems, driveway location, home location,
And what's the size of this? Is it 15 or
correct, 15 acres.
15 acres. And so you're saying 3 homes could go on there
total
if this is approved.
Correct. There's one home on the property, so it'd be 2 additional, or potentially 4 additional with a cluster. But again, they do need to meet all the standards in order to maximize their density.
And I think I heard Chad say that the study that's going on has no impact on this and vice versa. Okay. That helps me a little bit. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just a comment. Looking around that area on the plat that we're looking at right there, can we see that what are other potential areas that could actually come in and qualify or actually be rezoned for additional, let's say, development? Are there numerous ones?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Persky, that is up to the landowners at the time of a request.
Right.
And we actually used to have a finding of fact, or I think we still do in a rezoning, is, how could this affect future requests in the, additional requests in the future in this area? And that's a hard one for you or for the Planning Commission to gauge, because we don't know development patterns, we don't know landowners' intent to sell their property.
Agreed, and I guess I'm just posing the question in that this issue is not going to go away. Is that as people want to develop properties, there's going to be, additional properties that will want to come in there. Likewise, as I alluded to earlier, that same situation of the people around the lake. They want to maybe get a benefit of having a larger home on the lake, or they might want to have an additional pad for a boat or a recreational vehicle or something like that. It's a difficult situation because the more and more impervious that we, allow, the more problematic it becomes for those folks. The other question I was going to ask about the flooding on the road, is there anything that can be done for that flooding issue?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Persky, in reviewing the stormwater management plan, we did note that a portion of the road, as indicated by the testifier, is lower, and that is something that we would have to look at if the property is rezoned and platted. No new home can have access 2 foot below the regulatory flood protection elevation for safety purposes, and so we would have to address that with the applicant and the township, since this is a township road. So the answer is yes, if we look to a rezoning. If the rezoning isn't granted and the township is concerned with flooding on the road, then we would need to work with them. They would need to likely consult a township engineer. They have rights within their township road authority to improve roads, and we're not even necessarily involved with them, but we could certainly work with them on that.
Commissioner Merrick.
Yeah, the question that Commissioner Persky asked prompts another question for me. Have all of the property owners along this benefited area been notified that this reestablishment process is going on?
Commissioner Merrick, there was a public hearing.
Okay.
And so there would have been public.
Okay.
Everybody in the system should have been notified of that public hearing.
Okay.
And then through board action,
okay,
that reestablishment of records was approved. We just signed a contract recently.
Okay.
I would expect later this fall we'll have more to provide back to the people of the system. But everybody should have got notification and made aware that there was going to be a public hearing and that you as a board were going to take up that decision of whether to move forward or not move forward.
All of this is an ongoing education for me, so I appreciate all your help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Any questions, any comments? Do we have a motion of any kind?
I'll make a
Sure.
motion to concur with the Planning Commission's result or vote of 3-2 to move it forward. I think there's enough things going on in place that will determine what that outcome will be, whether it's going to be another 2 homes or maybe there'll be some issues and it'll end up being dropped. But I think it's been vetted enough, at least it appears by the person requesting the zoning change, that I think it looks like they're doing due diligence to the process.
Motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I'd just like to concur. I would like to see perhaps, going as least dense as possible, if that's going to be appropriate as far as the 2 homes opposed to 5.
Anyone else? Seeing nothing, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Okay, I think before going into environmental services items, we'll take a break.
I think Lee asked for it this time.
Oh.
We're back from break. We'll continue the board meeting. We're up to item F, environmental services consent items. Commissioners, any questions on the consent items? Mr. Persky.
I would like to move all the consent items except for number 2, unless you folks have any others you'd like to pull.
Okay, Commissioner Persky would like to have item 2 pulled. Anyone else?
I can second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. All of the consent items except number 2. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Commissioner Persky, item number 2.
Yeah, in the Planning Commission meeting, we had some discussion. Staff, could we get page 272 on the screen, perhaps? The discussion was about the high power line with NSP and about a substation that's being placed out there in a rural part of the county. And during the, that's good. And in the public hearing and in the discussion, you can see a power line that is in the red connecting the 2 blues together is rather lengthy, going over the freeway and then down to the south to the substation that's down at the bottom of the page. One of the property owners that actually lives right across from the freeway had just come in to comment and saying that he was never approached by the opportunity perhaps to bring it actually to his property. So the property that at the bottom of the page was purchased and they brought that substation down there. I'm not sure. There was also an issue with one of the properties has not yet had the access or the right-of-way approved. Staff, is that correct? I don't know if that's been cleared up yet or not. But it's been acquired. Okay. And so now it has, but that was a little bit problematic. And so not to delay the project, not to change the project, but the person at the public hearing was just making the point that there should be maybe an awareness of these projects going through, that he would have come forward and maybe offered his property that would have been just across from the freeway there, which would have cut the distance of the line in half or even into a third, and it would have worked out quite well, but he had no knowledge at the time.
So are you talking about the Welly property?
The one just
On the right
directly across. Everett's property, yeah, right here.
This one?
Yes.
Oh, that one. Okay.
Yeah, and you can see, perhaps it could have been brought directly across to one of those places there, and he was not aware that this project was even going through, and rightfully so. It could have made for just an easier connection. So I don't know about any process that we can do about seeing that in the future, if those things are done, that could improve. So.
Anyone else have any comments?
If not, then I'll move item 2.
Item 2 has been moved. Is there a second?
I can second, but I have a question.
Okay, Commissioner Merrick.
Is there something that we could recommend, or is this just not our area?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Merrick, the situation that was being discussed was this substation being located here in this particular location, and was there an opportunity or something that could have been done to place it in a closer proximity and then hook up the line without this whole gerrymandering of a line? Yeah. The answer is we do have essential services as permitted uses, so we don't look at the physical location of when they acquire that property for that purpose. There's no specific thing that we do as environmental services because it's a permitted use for substation location. If you would like to discuss that, we could in the future have conversation about substation locations, but I believe they purchased that quite some time ago.
Well, I don't have any specific recommendation, but maybe in the back of our minds we could be thinking about this, and as discussion goes on with Planning Commission and the board over time, just keep that in the back of your mind.
Commissioner Notch.
And maybe even to tag on to that, when obviously the substation, I think, came to the Planning Commission last year at some point, maybe the question at that point would have been, where is the substation, what's it accessing? You're building a substation, but where does it go? It needs a line to go somewhere.
Right.
the question might have been, what would have been the plan? Where was the line?
Right, yeah.
Where were you going to take this energy you have
Right.
and move it to?
Right.
Anyone else? It's been moved and seconded. Seeing no other discussion, we'll vote. All in favor, signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And now we are up to item G1, and Shelley said you did mention something about that.
We are on G1. We would like to remove that item from the agenda. It's no longer needed. They did find financing in a different way.
All right, thank you. So item 2.
So that is our SCORE program fund allotments. So Mark Lateral is here, and Troy Fryhammer is also here to go through this agenda item.
Morning, Mr. Chair. We're on packet page 477. The item is seeking approval from the board for the allotted dollars proposed to be dispersed from the Select Committee on Recycling and the Environment, or the SCORE program funds. A little background on this. On February 6th of 2018, the County Board approved $300,000 for grant projects from the 2018 SCORE funding. Environmental Services received 7 grant applications totaling just over $398,000 in requests. These grant applications were reviewed by the 5-person SCORE Grant Committee and are recommended with some modification to the original requested funding allotments. Troy Fryhammer from our solid waste program is here, and he can answer any questions this morning you may have regarding those. Our recommended action would be to approve the SCORE grants, SCORE grant requests as recommended by the reviewing committee.
Board members? Do we have a motion?
I'd move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Our next item looks like G3, and Angie Berg is here to discuss that with you.
The next item relates to your consideration on scheduling a public hearing or hearings to revoke shoreline contractor licenses. As the Planning Commission and Board reviewed our shoreland alteration requirements last fall and early winter, the Board also agreed to keep the licensing requirement. Stearns County does license our shoreline contractors, and by way of an ordinance requirement, if there's a violation of the ordinance and a shoreline contractor who is licensed performs work without a permit, we are obligated to bring these items to the commissioners for your attention. Your options would be to hold a public hearing for any or all of the 3 contractors. By way of having them here today would serve as a warning. And those would be your 2 options. I know a couple of commissioners had asked, is there a penalty in the fee schedule? And there's a $1,000 unlicensed contractor fee if you're unlicensed. If you're licensed, this is the procedure we go through. It's the threat of their license being revoked and not being able to perform work in the county.
Commissioner Merrick.
I think we should set a public hearing on this at a time to be determined by staff, and then let's go through this. So I move that we set a public hearing on this.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
There's been considerable frustration at the Planning Commission about some of the issues that we've had come through, and it just seems that the penalty is just a means by which of doing business, and so I think it needs to be addressed. So,
are any of these repeat offenders?
Mr. Chair, they are not. One of the 3, who is MC's Lawn and Landscaping, became licensed because they did work as an unlicensed contractor, but we have not had any issues with them since, nor the other 2. I would also note, I spoke to the chair about this. The contractors are here today. I told them that I wasn't sure if they were going to be allowed to speak or not, but they are here in case you would like to hear from them today.
I'd like to hear them at the public hearing.
Okay, been moved and seconded to have a public hearing. Anyone, any further discussion on it? Okay, seeing nothing, we'll vote. All in favor of having setting a public hearing, signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Do you have any indication as to when you would have this and approximate date or?
I did not look at a calendar,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, so we'll have to get that information. We'll make sure we let those
Yeah, make sure
parties
you're in
know.
touch with those folks.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Okay, thank you. Let's see. Item 4, I think we're up to, right?
Correct.
On the Elmer Majeski property.
Yes,
What do we do?
Mr. Majeski attended the public access forum on July 10th, and Shelley and I met with him and his wife and his grandson after the meeting. Subsequently, I've had several conversations with Elmer and his grandson Keith, and so this is by way of follow-up to the county commissioners. They have several options. I've outlined them here. They've exercised the option currently to apply for a variance. What the variance would allow them to do is to have 3 homes on 40 acres for a temporary period of time, along with a provisional use and an interim use. So there's going to be a couple different steps. The other option that would not require a variance, a conditional use permit or a provisional use, would be just to rezone part of the 40 acres, excuse me, that Keith would like to build on. They have elected and they've applied for the variance, and they will be on the August meeting.
So they're exercising option 1.
Correct.
Thank you.
It will be, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Merrick, will be option 1, 2, and 3. They're starting with 1.
Okay.
If the variance is denied, then they'll need to look to another alternative, which would really only involve a rezoning.
Okay.
I did talk to Elmer again yesterday. He called me. Has he indicated anything as far as finances being an issue here, as far as paying for fees to you? And if that does become an issue, can that be placed on his property taxes down the road versus having to come up with the cash and things? So I don't know if that's where his grandson, I have not talked to the grandson. So.
Mr. Chair, the grandson Keith, who intends to buying the 40, he paid for the variance application. We haven't spoke about future fees. The ordinance does allow for non-payment of fees to be assessed to the property tax if it's allowed, if the commissioners allow that. So if we need to go down that road, I can certainly offer that to Elmer.
Okay, thank you.
If that's an option.
Anyone else have any questions? Seeing none. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We are now up to Public Works. Jody Tyke, Joe.
Mr. Chair, before we dismiss, I just want to make you aware of an environmental issue. I received a letter earlier in the week from Linda Schwab, and that was in regards to a previously opened a gravel pit, I believe, in around Rockville. And she had some issues there with noise coming from the trucks and also the dust levels generated from the pit as well. And so, as staff, I'd like to see just a follow-up on that.
Mr. Merrick.
And a follow-up also on when you set the public hearing, I'd like to have one of the options, what a reasonable penalty fee would be. Bring that back. I was surprised that there's no provision for that, so thank you.
Okay, we will do that.
Anything else for Shelley? Okay, thank you,
Thank
Shelley.
you.
Also, if you're going to explore a penalty fee, also consider the option of conceivably bonding. Maybe there's a way to work that concept in.
Okay. Anything else?
Thank you, Shelley. We're up to item H, Public Works. Jody Tyke is here.
I don't need it.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
My first item under the Public Works agenda is I'm asking the board to approve a cost share agreement with the City of Bruton related to our County State Aid Highway 57 improvements. It's our standard cost share agreement with the exception that there is a turnback clause in there. About a year ago, I met with the City of Bruton, and because County Road 57 does not really serve a county function, they agreed that they would take it back if we participated in the reconstruction of it. So I'm asking the board to approve this agreement, and at a later date, I will be bringing the revocation resolution after the project is done.
I'll move to recommended action.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
For my next item, I'm asking the county board to approve advertising for bids for Melrose area resurfacing. We have, excuse me, 4 different projects right in Melrose or immediately surrounding it. I'm asking the board to approve a bid opening date of August 17th, 2018. In addition to the resurfacing, we are doing some work for the city of Melrose with some new pedestrian ramps for a future sidewalk, and then we are doing ADA upgrades to our existing sidewalk.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
For my next item, I was going to ask the board to award the contract for our federal project SP 073675-037, and that's the large County Road 75 resurfacing contract. Unfortunately, we have not received our clearance from MnDOT. I thought we would for sure before today, based on the disadvantaged business enterprise goals and commitments. So rather than asking you to award, and you do have the lump sum bid summary in your packets, I'm asking the board to authorize the administrator and auditor treasurer to officially award that at the time that we receive that clearance.
I'll move that with a question.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Commissioner Merrick.
My understanding was that that project was not going to happen this year. Did something change? Or?
We did need to advertise, and we need to award the contract within 90 days of authorization from Federal Highway. We are just going to do prep work this year,
Okay.
some of the median work, some of the left turn lane extensions, radius improvements, and then that paving of that last 50 feet of the Wobegon Trail will also take place this year.
Where's that project going to start on the west end?
The west end is, I believe it's Collegeville Road, where the state's project left
Okay.
off a couple of years ago.
Okay.
We're going to go from there.
Okay, so it's just prep work this year, the balance of it next year.
The major resurfacing, the lane shifts, all of that will take place
But we have to take
next
this
year.
action to move everything forward.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Did we vote on that?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. Then moved and seconded. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I have no miscellaneous unless anyone has anything for me.
Anyone have anything for Jody?
Well,
Otherwise,
yes, Mr. Chair, just a question. There's, if I don't know, did I get an email from you, or was there something in the print or on radio about you looking at a speed study on County Road 120?
The city of Sartell, typically when we do a speed study within and adjacent to municipalities, and County Road 120 is on the border of Sartell and St. Cloud, we want both municipalities to concur because in this particular case especially, those police departments also help enforce that speed study. With the speed study, there's also always a chance that the speed limit can go up instead of down. So we want to know from a political perspective that these cities support this speed study. Sartell at this time is opposed to a speed study being done. I will have further conversations. The city administrator was clear that they didn't think they could trump our authority if we wanted to do that speed study. So I'm going to reach out to a few of the parties, including MnDOT, who would be involved in that speed study, and ask if it would be better if we consider doing that at a time after we do those intersection improvements at County Roads 4 and 120 next year, or if they thought now would be an okay time. So if it is going to be done, I would bring that resolution back to the board in August so I have time to talk to some of the parties involved.
Well, I was surprised to see where there was a request in the first place. I thought everything was moving fine. I live in the area, as you know. And
It's in the area. It came from a resident who lives just off of County Road 120 in Sartell. The area has changed. I mean, it's grown up quite a
Right.
bit since the last speed study, which was done in 2004. So actually, it may have been 2002 because I believe it was about 16 years. So, and that's when it went up to 45 as opposed to having the variable speed limits
Right,
throughout
yeah.
there.
Okay.
With the roundabouts and the traffic signal at Pinecone, there has been quite a bit that's changed in addition to the
Okay.
new buildings. But I want to have some further discussions.
Thank you.
just one thing, Jody, it did receive a couple people that complimented on County Road 10 from Cold Spring to Avon on the quality of work that was done on there.
Oh, 50? County Road 50?
County Road 50, exactly. And I told them they should be complimenting you. So I don't know if they've called you yet or not.
We've gotten a few compliments, and I actually passed that on to those staff that deserve that credit. And the contractor, for the most part, was really good with working with the motoring public on there. And sometimes when a road is in really tough shape, people appreciate the improvements all the more, too. So.
Thank you. Joe?
And I'll add that we have heard positive comments about County Road 2 as well. So, yeah, it's good to see that.
Thank you. I will pass that on as well.
Thank you, Jody. We are up to item I, update on the first year of purchasing of the card program. Randy?
I have with me from the auditor's office Glenn and Joe and Jackie in the treasurer's office and Sarah. And the P-card program now is about a year old, and I know there was a couple questions when we started it, so they're going to provide an update on the P-card program. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, as long as we're handing out compliments, I have to compliment Joe for working with me on expense reports. There have been some challenging times, but he's been very gracious and very accommodating, so thank you.
Well, great. Well, good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. As Randy said, it's been about a year since this board approved our initial purchasing card policy, which was our purchasing card program, and we thought it was about time to do what we're calling a year in review. You can see the agenda is relatively short. I'm going to be talking about some of the overarching project goals that we had at a high level. Well, again, we'll talk at a high level regarding operating statistics and some survey results. And Jackie then will talk about some treasury updates. And then Sarah will take us home with what's coming up next with the P-card program. So as we started this program over a year ago, we had a lot of goals. Our overarching goals were really efficiencies. That's what we were trying to gain. Efficiencies for both the user with the P-card, so the individual using the P-card, and then the county as a whole. So the best way we thought to understand really how the individual was being efficient or not was to do a survey. So Joe and I put together a survey a few months ago. We issued it to not just the P-card users themselves, but to everybody involved in the program, so all the way up to the approver level of the P-cards. And we got the results back, and you can see those top two bullets. The P-cards are viewed as being more efficient than the previous method of purchasing, and 93% of the respondents said that it's added value to the department. So we feel that first part of our overarching goal from a P-card perspective is being met, so we're very happy so far with that. The second one, from a perspective of the county as a whole, is really seen downstream, and that's with the reduction in paperwork, with POs, purchase requisitions, fewer invoices, which results in a lot less keying into the system, as well as then fewer checks, which result in a lot of soft dollar savings as well. So we have some statistics coming later in the program here that will, will tell you about some reductions in those volumes, which are showing, yes, we're seeing those downstream efficiencies as well. We had a couple smaller, not insignificant goals, but lesser goals with hard dollar savings as well as rebates. So hard dollar savings are really seen with check reduction. So every time you reduce a check, you're reducing paper, check stock, printing costs, postage, those type of things. So every time you reduce a check, you're seeing some hard dollar savings, and we have had a significant reduction in checks. Again, and we'll show those stats to you in a little bit. Lastly, rebates. Our card provider provides rebates for every time we use a P-card, and so we are receiving rebates at a plan level. Now, having these efficiencies met is fantastic, but it wouldn't be any good, of course, without strong internal controls. So as you can see by the top line, we've had absolutely no internal or external fraud from the use of a P-card, which is exceptional. And I guess I should have known this off the top of my head, but how many P-card transactions have we had?
About 1,900.
About 2,000 P-card transactions and absolutely no fraud. So we're very, very pleased with that. And what I've listed here on the screen is 7 of our top type of controls. And some of these we talked about over a year ago, and maybe 1 or 2 of these might be relatively new. But we'll start with the P-card purchasing restrictions. Every card has built-in restrictions, as it says here, quantity and dollar limit that they can use that card for, where they can be made, and of course, if they try to do something that the card doesn't allow, they are declined at the point of sale. So if they aren't allowed to buy something at a liquor store, which nobody is, they would be declined. And the best thing about that is we find out that next day, or actually that day. It's almost instantaneous. If somebody tries to do something with their card, we find out immediately. It's very transparent. Multiple levels of review at a transaction level. The reporting from the third party, from our card provider, Wells Fargo, is very good. We have mandatory training, up to 2 hours, and it's not just for the users themselves, it's actually for everybody involved in the program. So if you're a reconciler or approver, you have to go to this training as well. We have ongoing education throughout the year. We have emails, we have phone conversations, we have an internet site that we built on The Point that has tons of information out there that has policies, where you can get information, how you can learn more about using your P-card efficiently. And we're eliminating less controlled forms of credit. We talked about this over a year ago, and we're actually doing this. We're eliminating a lot of store-type credits, and this going to a much more controlled environment with the P-card. And lastly, fraud insurance. The card provider provides fraud insurance for every P-card purchase, so that's obviously a very nice thing to have as well. And one thing I want to add on the mandatory training piece, that second bullet down where it says review policies, we're not just reviewing the P-card policy, we're reviewing all types of policies in this training. We talk about the purchasing policy, obviously. We talk about travel. We talk about meals. We talk about personal use of what kind of benefit can you garner using dollars. It's in a personnel policy. We talk cell phones. We're talking capital assets. So we're talking all kinds of policies. So a lot of times these people in these training sessions are hearing these policies for the first time. So it's nice. So not only are we talking P-card, but we're also espousing all types of policies that these guys are going to be probably seeing with their P-card. So with that said, I'm going to pass this over to Joe, who is actually our P-card administrator as well. So he runs the program.
Good morning, everybody. As Glenn and Randy both mentioned, my name is Joe Greschwacken, and for this project, I am the purchasing card administrator. So a quick high-level review of my responsibilities. I meet with the departments. I work with them to identify their need for purchasing cards and also identify what staff will be involved. From there, I meet with the department directors and then Randy to gain their approval to move forward with those individuals. After that, I train each staff member that's involved and then have an ongoing relationship with each one of them for questions and if any issues arise. So the first slide shows our purchasing card rollout history. As you can see, we moved slowly. We wanted to make sure we were doing it right and had all the best controls in place. We started in May of 17 with the Highway Department, and we chose them because not only did they have a strong need for purchasing cards, but they also had really strong leadership that wanted to be part of this new initiative, so we appreciate their work with that. In January, to further maximize our rebate revenues, we started something called AP Control. And what that is it's a systematic payment of invoices in our accounts payable department to pre-authorized vendors. The vendors sign up for this purely for their benefit is to get paid quicker. So this was to increase our rebates. Just recently we added building facilities to our list, and their primary use was to gain efficiencies with the new service center expansion project. So we're excited to see how that goes, to see if that helps them on that major county project. Upcoming, we're hoping to expand to any other program that or department that does have a use for purchasing cards, and then also to expand the above pilot programs. So first year accomplishments, currently right now we have 42 cards in the field. To date, as Glenn mentioned, we have 1,900 purchases made in just over a year, with an average transaction size of about $240 per purchase. And as you can see, 58% of those are under $100, and almost 80% are under $250. So you can see this is a lot of low-value purchases. And from the start, this was our goal to eliminate some of the paperwork and approval processes for those low-level purchases. Along with that, on the right, you can see the purchase orders that have been reduced by the departments with the purchasing cards. 34% of POs have been reduced through this process. And finally, Glenn mentioned that our primary goals were gaining efficiencies and then also reducing hard cost savings. And what we call the icing on the cake is the rebate revenue. So with the P card, AP Control, and then also the purchasing department's increase of the company credit card, we are on pace to earn about $30,000 to $35,000 in rebates this first year. So we're excited to see that number grow as the program grows over the years. As Glenn mentioned, we did a survey a few months ago. We had 93% respond that the P card has added value to their department. About 2/3 of the respondents said that it either decreased their workload or had no change on their workload. The remainder said that it did increase, but only at a moderate level. No one responded that it increased their workload at a major level. 97% indicated that the P card training properly prepared them, And some of the major purchases that staff like using their P cards are for emergency purchases, trainings, conferences, and then also the supplies to do their jobs. And finally, we surveyed all the departments on if there was a positive impact in their department with having a P card in some of the pieces of the ordering process, such as simplifying the process, increasing the accuracy of the order, increasing the speed of the order, and most importantly, increasing the efficiency of the order. And the majority of the people did respond there's a positive impact. And one thing to note is we consider at a department level a no change to be a positive response because of all the downstream reductions in purchase orders, checks, and other efficiencies down the road. And also we consider the P card to be much more controlled and much more transparent, and of course the rebate that comes along with it. So in the end, the project we feel has been a great success. As you can see by the survey, the departments are benefiting from them. You can see by the decreased purchase orders, checks, and increase in rebates that the county and taxpayers are also benefiting from these. So I'll turn it over to Jackie for some update on the Treasury Department.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. Jackie Anderson. The first slide talks about the EFTs to the vendors and clients. Now, we have the employees that are currently signed up to get their checks electronically deposited. Townships and school districts also have their checks electronically deposited. Back in January, we started contacting the other vendors and some of our clients that get checks on a regular basis. I'm kind of happy to report since then we've had over 700 people sign up to have their checks electronically deposited, and which is a huge savings in postage, the cost of checks, and the MICR cartridge that is very expensive to put the MICR on the bottom of the checks. So that was a really nice improvement, and it's growing steadily. Okay, so you can see the reduction of the checks have reduced by 32%, so that's a good plus. The next one we have is number of parcels. In our tax system, we're able to take payment plans so that sometimes it's kind of hard to come up with a big lump sum in May and October and November. So we're doing monthly payment plans, and you can see that one has increased also. We're at 764 people that are taking advantage of the 10-month payment plan there, and that's steadily increases every year. The delinquent payment plan, that's kind of a different concept. These are people, that taxpayers that are in the process of going to foreclosure. We want to help them out get caught up on their taxes, so we've devised a payment plan for them. And currently we have 89 taxpayers. They have, a couple of them have several parcels, several years delinquency. This, we have been successful in getting them caught up within 3 years versus going on a confession of judgment, and people are just really liking these payment plans. Then the final one is the use of electronic tax statements. We started that in 2015 at 666 people that wanted their tax statements sent to them electronically. We're currently at $862. And again, this saves time because they do not get a hard copy. Saves time, mailing forms and everything. So huge savings again. So it's kind of my little.
And with that, we all know that change is inevitable. So the department here has goals on what's coming next, where we would like to see this program continue to expand. And we'd like to continue to roll out the purchasing card program. We're looking to hopefully add IS shortly, maybe expand in human services. They started small, and so there's ways we can maybe expand the program there. We're looking at this continued growth of the AP control program. Currently, the Auditor Treasurer's Office is doing that. We'd look to expand that into highway and human services in order to help those efficiencies there. We talked about, reducing these charge accounts and credit cards at departments, and so we want to make sure we're making a clean sweep and making sure we're getting rid of any small charge accounts or credit cards that are being held at other departments and get them into this purchasing card program so we're all under one umbrella. And then lastly, this has led to several process reviews. We can see the need for improvement in various different processes. So currently we're working with IS to help us review that expense reimbursement module, as well as accounts payable, capital assets, and just maintaining the vendors that we pay. I think it's been a great, I'm very new here, but it looks like it's been a very positive thing, and I know the department has great pride in really working with all the departments to train them and collaborate. So with that, I think we could take any questions.
Any questions? Commissioner Merrick.
No, I think Lee would be disappointed if I didn't ask questions, so I have to ask that question. The survey, I mean, it's not a big thing, but curious why there wouldn't be 100%. I mean, this is all county people. I don't need an answer to that, but it just kind of jumped out at me. Why wouldn't there be 100% response? Security. So do these folks take those cards home, or how do we secure those?
Some do if they need them out in the field. Like they could have them in their wallet, but we do ask they sign an agreement that says they will safeguard the credit card at all
So
times.
if they're on vacation, they take it along on vacation?
Probably not on vacation. They hopefully lock it up in their desk or something.
Okay. And then Jackie, you said that there's about 800 excuse me, vendors that have signed up for the EFT. How many vendors or clients do we have? What is the maximum number?
Oh, most of them are clients that.
So what is 800 the most that we'd ever have?
No.
So what is that top number that we could have?
Oh, that I don't
The
know.
upside of it.
So,
I didn't get those information.
Well, I don't need that, but
Yeah.
so the goal is much higher than 800.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Every time we mail a check out, we mail an insert with it asking them if they would consider signing up to go direct deposit.
The part that's been kind of challenging for me and maybe even disappointing is the number of people, and I don't know how many staff or employees or board members sign up for the electronic tax statement. I mean, it's the simplest, easiest thing to do, and I'm surprised that we don't have a much, much higher number there. That's always been kind of challenging for me. You know, first of all, so you don't have to mail it out, but even the payment of it, I mean, that's about as simple as you get. But certainly the mailing of it, and where you're up to about 60 or 70,000 statements that you mail now or something like that. So
Correct.
There's an opportunity for a lot of savings there. And so I'd be curious. I think it'd be good for administration to work with staff here sometime to see how many we could do. So we get, I mean, we have 800-900 in county employees. I mean, what number of county employees or staff participate in that? I think it'd be good to kind of encourage use of that system, lead by example. I appreciate the report. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, didn't Lee have any?
No, he's all folded up already.
Didn't Lee have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We have one item left, and that is item I. Or wait, I thought there was one where we have to do the canvassing board yet.
That's the one Lee was waiting for.
Oh, yeah, that's what Lee was waiting for.
So we have the.
I'll do that.
I could do that, sure.
We need two commissioners to.
Sure.
Okay.
And in fact,
Do you need a
the
motion?
commissioner can appoint somebody else, too.
That's true, yes.
Okay. So Commissioner Lenzmeyer and Commissioner Merrick have volunteered for the canvassing
Yeah, I can do
board?
that.
Okay. And that would be the day after the primary?
17th.
Yes, correct. And we would need a motion for that.
I'll move that Commissioner Merrick and Commissioner Lenzmeyer be on the canvassing board.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I should abstain like somebody else did.
We are up to items by commissioners. Commissioner Lenzmeyer. Commissioner Notch.
Nothing.
Commissioner Merrick.
Yeah, you know, everybody can do what they want, but I'm surprised that the chair of the planning commission abstains. I thought the only time that you abstain is if you have a conflict of some type. But just to abstain because you don't want a tie vote, that doesn't send a good message to me as a county board member. I'd like to know what every member feels like, and if you abstain, I don't know what you feel like, and I guess that's his right, but it just doesn't seem like the right thing to do.
I must agree with Commissioner Merrick on that one. I think a 3-2 vote is definitely different than a 4-2 vote or a 3-3 vote.
Right, yeah.
And we've had that discussion. We've had discussion on that since this vote. This vote goes back, I think, earlier than before we had brought it up. Yeah, the issue being that if there's 6 people at the board, the chair was saying that he would abstain. Well, when you have a 3-2 vote, well, if he votes, therefore it can go 4-2 or it can go 3-3, which obviously gives us a better direction in which to go. So, yeah, and I think we've corrected that situation.
Okay, good. Thank you, Joe. Do you have any items by commissioners?
The only other item I have was it was a great county fair. Weather cooperative.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of fun things going on out there in Sauk Center.
And once we adjourn here, we're going to go to the service center for the groundbreaking there. See everyone there at noon. This meeting is adjourned.